Everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Washington County Board of Education. I call this meeting to order and declare a quorum. We have 6 members present this evening. Mr. Bickford is not with us. I'd like to welcome to the dais our new student board member, May Cruz. Welcome, May.
Thank you.
And I'd like to acknowledge that this is Dr. Sovine's first board business meeting, so we're happy to have you here, Dr. Sovine. At this time, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This time we'll have approval of this afternoon's agenda. Is there a motion, please?
So move.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval? All right, we have 6 affirmative, and the student member concurs. We'll move to approval of the minutes.
Mrs. Williams, we have quite a few minutes to go over, so bear with us. We have 7 motions tonight. The first motion will be approval of the closed session minutes dated Thursday, June 9th, 2022.
Okay, so you're moving for approval. Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Okay, we will go ahead and vote because those have already been corrected in closed session. So these are closed session minutes. All those in favor of approval? Okay, we have 6 affirmative.
Our second motion is for the approval of the closed session minutes dated Friday, June 10th, 2022.
Guessford, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Again, these have already been discussed in closed session, so we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approval, the closed session minutes of Friday, June 10th. Okay, 6 affirmative.
Our third motion is for the approval of the closed session minutes dated Tuesday, June 14th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. We'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve the minutes of Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. All those in favor? We have 5. Any abstentions? So we have 5 affirmative and 1 abstention. Okay, Mr. Guessford?
We'll move to our fourth motion for the approval of the business meeting minutes dated the same day, June 14th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Are there any additions or corrections to the business meeting minutes of Tuesday, June 14th? No. We'll move to the vote. All those in favor? All right, we have 5 affirmative. Any abstentions? 1 abstention.
Our fifth motion is for the approval of the closed session minutes dated Friday, June 17th, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Evans? Okay, we'll move to the vote. We're voting on the closed session minutes of Tuesday, June 17th, 2022. All those in favor? All right, we have 6 affirmative votes.
Our sixth motion is for the closed session minutes dated June 21st, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Guessford. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. We'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approval, Tuesday, June 21st, 2022, closed session minutes. Okay, we have 6 affirmatives.
And our final motion is for the business meeting minutes dated the same day, Tuesday, June 21st, 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Gaspard. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Are there any additions or corrections to the business meeting minutes of Tuesday, June 21st, 2022? Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor? All right, we have 6 affirmative. So all minutes presented have been approved. Thank you, Mr. Gaspard. Thank you, colleagues. This time we'll have public comment. I have no one who has signed up in advance. Is there anyone out there who would like to come forward? Mr. Lowen, you've spoken on numerous occasions. Do I need to review policy KD for you?
No, I believe I have it.
Okay, we don't have a timekeeper. Would you do us the honors, Mr. Gaspard?
And you have 5 minutes.
Are you ready?
Good.
Thank you.
My name is Ethan Lowen, and I wanted to speak this evening about a meeting that occurred between parents and teachers and administrators 4 weeks ago at the Boys and Girls Club. And it was moderated by one of the officers of the local Teachers Association. And it was a very special event, actually. It's the sort of thing you wish you could bottle because it was very relevant and share with everyone. But there were 3 primary takeaways that I think it's important are restated. And one is that the amount of care that the teachers in this county have for their students, it's really awe-inspiring. And I want to take a moment to say that because in today's society where we have these manufactured divisions that are just kind of fed to everyone all the time, it's important to focus on the truth, which is that people do care. And in the case of our teachers, I don't know how they could care more about the welfare of our students or our children. Point number 2 is that we do have a crisis in the public schools, and it takes the form of the number of children that are addicted to drugs. Literally, the sheer volume of children that are enslaved to addiction has gotten to the point where teachers are having trouble educating the classes because of the behavioral issues. Point number 3 is that there is a second crisis that is occurring in our schools as well, and it is a lack of community involvement. And it takes the form of one, private school and homeschool parents that have basically removed their children from the public schools, and for good reason. It works, and it works well. But there also are parents whose children are still in the public schools, and they just aren't engaged. They're not putting in the time, they're not putting in the energy to be engaged in their children's education. And the problem is that parental involvement is the secret sauce that makes education work for a child. There's a subset of children that have hardly a fraction of the issues that were being discussed that evening, and that is homeschooled students, private school students, even the students of public schools where there is community engagement, such as that high school in Louisiana that made the national news about 6 months ago, where they had to call the police, I believe, over 100 times in 1 month because of the violence, until the fathers of the community walked in and started patrolling the schools, the hallways, and literally the number of police calls dropped to a fraction of what they were. That's the power of parents, and only parents have that. And by parents disengaging from the process, they've created a void. And over the years, different organizations have stepped in and said, well, if the parents are not going to guide the public schools, then we are going to guide the public schools to teach the children our worldview. And it has led to some crazy situations, such as what occurred 2 weeks ago, when the National Teachers Union had a convention, and at that convention, they had a proposal that they were going to strike the words mom and mother from all of their documents and replace it with the word birthing parent, because it is their position that mom and mother is a sexist and a bigoted word. And that's the type of craziness that actually was not in the public school system until after the community disengaged. And so there's really 2 things that I believe need to happen. One is that the community needs to re-engage with the public schools. And that means even the private schooling parents, the homeschooling parents, because for the first time, I'm hearing them talk about how they're having trouble finding curriculum that doesn't have elements of the curriculum that caused many of them to actually pull their children from the public schools in the first place. So disengaging from the public schools has backfired. And the only way to fix that is to re-engage. The other thing is that this Board of Education also needs to remember what boards exist for. Because boards have existed for centuries, and they have just a few very specific purposes, one of which is they are the defenders of the culture of the organization. So it is this board's purpose, its mission, to make sure that the schools remain focused on the fact that they are just extensions of the parents in the area of education. It is not this board's responsibility or purpose to enact the curriculum and the policies that force teachers to teach the worldview of these organizations that have taken advantage of the fact that the community has disengaged and allowed this void. So I call on this board to keep that in mind, and with all of its future decisions, as well as correcting past decisions. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lowen. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Good evening, Ms. McCusker. I don't think I need to review the policy for you either, do I?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Hi, my name is Ashley McCusker, and I am a Patriot parent. This is not the first time I have spoken, and I am sure will not be the last time. Let's refresh everyone's memory on things our group has spoken about since creating this group last year. We have spoken about parental choice on masking, vaccinations, and anything else that falls under this category. We have spoken about getting pornographic material out of our school libraries, asking the Board of Education to represent us and take back power from the Maryland State Board of Education, getting sign language counted towards a foreign language credit, speaking about the negative mental effects the COVID response was causing our children, including masking, quarantine, and vaccinations, and being against any form of indoctrination of our children. I am sure I have missed some topics that were spoken about, but I just wanted to show you a little bit about what we stand for and against. Now I need to address the flat-out lies that were told and insinuated about our group last meeting. We have a Facebook group, and I double-checked with one of our parents who runs the page. To our knowledge, there was never a call for a protest of the new superintendent that any of us were aware of. So to say you showed up on the wrong day because no one was there was not the reason no one was there. It's because the protest was a flat-out lie. A protest was never mentioned by our group. To take something that was never spoken about or organized by our group and to then insinuate we could somehow be linked to hate groups or a militia watch because of our name is out of line. You accuse our group of having unsubstantiated proof of what our concerns were regarding the candidates, only to show up and call us out by name, stating false information with no proof. At the time of the supposed protest, we didn't even know which candidate was getting the job. To then mention you were once a board member makes it even worse. As a board member, don't you want to hear what your constituents have to say? Now here's where some will say the community did know because of stakeholder groups. I know there were stakeholder groups because I was in one. I was able to ask 2 questions and heard the response for a total of 13. Both candidates answered well at the interview. I was lucky enough to be selected. What about all the other parents who may have had questions or concerns? I can assure you there was a wide range of topics we went over in my stakeholder group, and I think any parent would have wanted to hear any one of those answers. But once again, we are told to sit down, be quiet, don't ask questions, and you will take what we give you because we know what's best. This process should have been open to the public. There is absolutely no reason we should not know what our future superintendent believes in and stands for and how they plan to incorporate those things in our county. We have had issues because of the secrecy of it, and I think it could have eased a lot of people's minds hearing their answers. As a stakeholder, I was not able to talk about anything that was discussed at the interview. There were things I agreed with and things that I didn't. It's completely unrealistic to think we will get a superintendent that checks off every box for each person. It's just not possible. So I went into that interview with that mindset. We, as a group, have repeatedly said we welcome Dr. Sovine and hope we have a great relationship with him and wish him nothing but the best. We are allowed to disagree on things and bring up our concerns without being accused of or insinuated that we potentially have connections to hate groups or militia watch. So Dr. Sovine, you said you wanted to have parental involvement, and I can assure you that the Patriot parents are involved, and we would like to welcome you to Washington County and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mrs. McCusker. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward? Okay. At this time, we'll have board member response to public comment. Colleagues, anyone wish to respond? Thank you to both of our speakers this evening. We appreciate it. We'll move to old business. We have one item of old business this evening, and it's the second reading of proposed changes to policy JICJ, use of personally owned electronic devices. Good evening.
Good evening, President Williams, member of the board, Dr. Savine. The Policy Committee recommended and the Board of Education approved the first reading of proposed changes to Policy JICJ on June 21st, 2022. The committee posted a notice following the first reading on board docs and the school system's website seeking stakeholder comment on the proposed changes. No comments have been received at this time. The committee is now recommending the Board of Education approve the second reading of proposed changes to Policy JICJ.
Thank you, Mrs. Ram. Is there a motion, please?
Madam President, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy JICJ entitled Use of Personally Owned Electronic Devices.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Any questions or any discussion? No? Then we'll move to the vote. We're voting to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy JICJ entitled Use of Personally Owned Electronic Devices. All those in favor? All right. Student member concurs? Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Ram. Moving to new business. Our first item under new business is the consent agenda. We have with us this evening Mr. Scott Bakedel, Supervisor of Purchasing. Good evening.
Good evening, President Williams, members of the board, Dr. Sovine. Tonight, I have 8 items for your review. The Purchasing Review Committee has reviewed these items, and they are being recommended for approval. And staff is available if you have any additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bakedel. Is there a motion?
President Williams, I move to approve the awards and renewals for Microsoft licenses renewal to Bell Technologies at a cost of $496,130.95. Backup as a service and disaster recovery as a service to Innovative Inc. at a cost of $11,000 per month. Elevator maintenance services to Otis Elevator at a cost of $5,242.28 per month. Electronic security gate and fencing at Claude Kitchens Fairview Outdoor School to Long Fence Company Inc. at a cost of $234,800. Smithsburg High School roof replacement to Frontline Contracting Inc. at a cost of $3,820,000. Intervention phonics kits to Benchmark Education Company at a cost of $69,498. Website redesign services to Final Site at a 5-year total cost of $151,500. And laptops and charging cards to CDWG at a cost of $341,160.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Do we have any questions or any discussion? Mr. Evans?
I have a question about the phonics intervention kits. How are they different from the phonics kits that we've used in the past?
That's an easy one. They're actually the same. We're renewing. These are the ones that we approved that our reading tutors have been using at the elementary level. And actually, I think we showed them previously at a CNI meeting.
I just wanted to make
Yep.
it known to the public that, thank you.
So before, because we renew these Microsoft licenses annually. And round numbers, $500,000 each year. Is there something we could do where we do that on a multi-year basis to kind of reduce cost, or is there even a cheaper service out there that might do something similar? Like, I can't imagine this would be too different than something Google Docs would be able to provide. And maybe I'm wrong about that too, I don't know. So is there a cheaper alternative or a way to reduce that cost by doing multi-year contract rather than one annual contract?
Thank you for the question. I'm Joe Allen, Executive Director of Technology. So the Microsoft licensing, if you see, it's part of MEEC, which is the Maryland Education, Electronics Education Consortium. So we're banding together with all the other counties, schools, and colleges to get preferred pricing. You cannot do a multi-year agreement at this time with them. It is a 1 year at a time because they do true-ups of counting students and counting staff to arrive at that. The other thing that's a big part of that cost is it's not just Microsoft Word or Google. There are other things in there, such as SQL database licenses. There are security features. There are Azure Cloud features built into that. So it goes beyond just your basic Microsoft Office that's in there. The entire MEEC consortium is renegotiating the contract, and hopefully there will be multi-year in the future, but at this time it is just 1 year at a time. So I just want to also note that this cost is down by about $20,000 from last year. We were able to trim some of that due to some of the counts that we have.
Excellent, thank you very much, I appreciate that. And then the only other one is for the website redesign services. I don't know if this is an Aaron question, who unfortunately is not with us tonight, but I guess I have a couple questions. So why are we doing it? What started that conversation? And, what will this accomplish?
So I know in talking with Aaron, our website hasn't been updated, I don't think, or redesigned since 2015. And so I think there's some things that it doesn't do. It's being able to search on our website is I think very limited. Also some ADA compliance issues that we have that our current one is not, and it would take a redesign through our current vendor as well to get I believe up to that standard. And I think our website is a custom made website, so it requires our vendor to do a lot of things that we'll be able to do ourselves with the new website and some of the other options as well. So every time that they need to make a change or adjust something in a page, a lot of times they have to reach out to our current vendor to do that for us. And of course, that costs additional, it's an hourly rate on top of, I think we get 3 hours of kind of custom work
Per month?
Per month, right. And unfortunately, it's not even carryover. So if we don't use the 3 hours, it doesn't carry over to 6 the next month. It's 3 per month.
So what would you estimate our cost to be over the last 12 months for what we currently have? I see Jeff coming up, so.
You mean what have we spent in
For what our current
maintenance?
Yeah.
So I looked at the last 5 years, and on average, so first we pay about $22,500 for hosting.
Currently.
Right, and then on top of that, over the last 5 months, and our current vendor has done some other work that wasn't specifically web design work. So I didn't go through every line of invoices, but on average, I would say we were in about the $25,000 range on paying for maintenance and custom work per year. So at the end, this should really be at least cost neutral and probably a savings.
Okay, that was going to be where I was kind of going to get at there. So we're going to, it seems like maybe about an extra $5,000 a year at most. Is that about
I think that's a fair assessment. As the procurement review committee met and asked a lot of the same questions, Erin has assured us from the research she's done doing the review and with Scott's help that we're going to be probably within $3,000 to $5,000 annually for hosting and service. Another benefit to using this particular vendor is we are going to have unlimited support. Whereas right now, we are limited on the amount of hours we can get per month. We'll now have unlimited support. We also have some other microsites that we pay for that likely the cost for those will go away because some of those microsites will be able to be brought into the new design.
Excellent. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
We'll continue with the website. I will say that 2 years ago, I was the one that brought that up. We had quite a few parents and general public had contacted us. They were having a hard time finding things on there to follow, like our agenda. It was hard to click and find out because it was kind of buried. And I'd asked if we could at least look into making it a little bit more user-friendly. And I think Boyd was put that over onto Aaron to work on over the time. So my question would be, how are we going to make sure that it is parent user-friendly for the future? Are we, I mean, all the educated people can sit there and go, this is great, but for people who don't know how to use computers and they still want to follow their child's school board agenda, are we making it really easy for them to click on the word school board agenda and then they're going to open it up? I mean, we got to think about how we're going to do that because a lot of people aren't computer literate, where some of us are and some of us aren't as well as you guys are. So how are we going to make sure that we're meeting their needs on that? Because that was a big issue when I brought it up. They couldn't find stuff and it was buried, and they felt like if it was buried, it's like you don't want us to see it. And that's not our point, and we want to make sure that everyone sees it. So how are we going to do that?
I think one of the bonuses to redesigning the website, one of the things Aaron really wants to do, as Scott mentioned, is it has to be much more searchable than our website is right now. And that's one of the challenges of the current design is, you can Google something perhaps, and it's not even going to come up in a Google search. So not only is it not necessarily greatly searchable inside our own website itself, but on a larger scan of the web, so a lot of our content is not going to show up because it's not searchable. And we'll hit the ADA compliance, that some of the things that we're missing on the current website. So I think we can do that, and I will encourage Erin as she returns to meet and talk with some parents. Maybe we can pick some parents that have been active with us, some PTA parents, of our parents that want to be involved, and do some focus groups and talk about what it is they're looking for on the website and try to find a way that makes it a much cleaner, sleeker look, and make things that the parents really need more prominent. So, you're right. I mean, when you go to our website, if I wanted to get to, let's say, board docs to the board agenda to see what's being discussed tonight, you and I probably know that I can go to the top of the website, there's a link that's called board docs, and I know that that's all board information. The average person on the street doesn't know that, and we need to make, whether it's on the board page, where it even says board docs again, but it doesn't say what board docs is. Agendas, policies, meeting minutes, this is what if you want to follow what's going on the board, this is where you click. We need to really make that much more stand out so our parents can be engaged with us.
And also a link to watch the meetings.
Yes.
Because, like when you do if you don't get on Facebook and you don't know where to click on, it's hard to follow even the county meetings.
Absolutely.
So we're trying to Google it and trying to figure out how to get in. So people will call and say, how do I get into it? So let's make sure that we do that.
I would add, I don't mean to interrupt, but one thing is, this vendor works with other school systems. So one of our current vendors works with us. I don't know that they do any other school system. So one of the things we'll be able to lean on is some of their knowledge on the school systems they already currently do websites for. And, they'll be able to help assist Aaron in just what you said, making sure we have templates easily searchable and we're able to find things, general public is able to find things. I'm sure that's a problem, or not a problem, but a common theme throughout the country is, parents want to be able to just go click and find what they want to find immediately, really.
Right,
So.
but we don't.
And it is challenging. We have so much data, and so much things that want to be shared or that legally have to be shared on our website. So we have voluminous data on the website. Actually, Mr. Allen shared with me today, Final Site just finished and launched the redesign at Carroll County. So I think that's a place where we can also reach out and say, look at what they did. What's their redesign look like? reach out to their public information staff. What are you hearing from parents on a review of your website, some things they like and don't like, and why did you come to some of the decisions that you did? So we've got resources that way as well.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. The follow-up on the elevator maintenance. We have 20 elevators, and so are they maintained monthly?
I believe they have to be,
I mean, I know there's a yearly inspection.
Right,
but
right.
Are they,
I believe they're maintained, and the elevator, and then there's
Handicap
also
lifts. Also handicap lifts.
well, okay,
And it includes the parts, if something has to be repaired, there's the parts and maintenance are,
so what do you think we spent, last year on, I mean, maybe you can't come up with that, but I'm just trying to weigh out if we're paying for a 5-year contract of 151,
well, no, that's a monthly, and we could,
500, or 5,000.
Right, so it's about $60,000 a year is the service contract.
Okay, so I mean, are we spending that amount?
I would say yes.
Okay,
yeah.
then that's good.
And again, elevators in older buildings, I mean,
Yeah.
even the elevators here, I mean, this building is late 1960s it's designed, so we've had, a handful of issues here in this building as
Just
well.
don't want to be spending, if we're doing 60,000 and we're really only spending 20,000, why are we spending the extra money? You know what I'm saying? So, but if you say we're spending that, then I'm good with that.
My mother got stuck in an elevator once.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, guys.
The Smithsburg High School roof replacement, is that subject to the 79-21 split?
It is.
So that's the reason for the partially state funded. How much has that project probably increased because of inflation? Any ballpark figure? I mean,
I know Rob's back here. It's hard to say. Is it over what we budgeted when we submitted to the IAC, the Interagency Commission on School Construction, well over a year ago, and as those budgets were designed in the EFMP and in the CIP? Absolutely. That's the nature of all construction right now.
Yeah.
But it is hard to put a finger on where pricing has ultimately gone because we only have the snapshot of where we are. We do know that the Western Heights project was probably double off the top of my head, I think, when we rebid that from a year ago, from what it had been the year prior. So roofing is one of the types of projects that are just out of sight. As you're looking at any number of projects, a year ago, we were surprised. We did a renovation a year ago at Springfield Middle, and it came in under budget, and that was mostly sort of carpentry type work. Then we bid the electrical distribution project at Technical High School, and that was significantly over budget because electrical supplies are through the roof. So it varies a bit by buildings and trades, but right now I would say we as a facilities team feel like we are shooting a dart at a board a little bit in terms of how we're creating budgets and creating estimates on projects, and I would say the architects and engineers feel the same way.
and the prevailing wages that are part of the cost because that's state mandated.
Correct.
Does that vary, is that one prevailing wage for the whole state, or is that by region and within the state, or what?
It is regionalized. Correct me, Scott or Rob, I think we're in the DC region.
I
feel
don't know
like-
what region. Yeah.
Almost county by county, Rob is saying.
County by county?
But, prevailing wage typically, and we had a project recently that we bid both ways. We weren't quite sure we were going to hit a financial threshold or what funding source we were going to use to decide whether we're going to use prevailing wage or not prevailing wage, depending on the funding source. And it rose the price about 12, 13% was the value of prevailing wage.
And how long will this roof last? What's the age of it?
We typically expect 25 years on a roof. Some make it more, some make it slightly less, but
And
we
this
typically
school's-
look at 25 years.
The school's pushing almost 60 years old, getting pretty close.
If I remember off the top of my head, I want to say 1967.
Okay,
65.
65.
That's close.
Because I was there in 68, did student teaching, so I know it was there then,
Yep.
so, yeah.
You're old.
Yeah, well, you are too.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll move to the vote then. We're voting on approval of this evening's consent agenda as read by Mr. Evans. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All right, we have 6 affirmatives and the student member concurs, so we have an approved consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our next item of new business, we'll have Mrs. Ramback, is the first reading of proposed changes to policy JCA, establishment of school attendance areas.
Thank you. The Policy Committee reviewed Policy JCA as part of its review of Section J of the Policy Manual. The committee updated the format of the policy and aligned the policy with the school system's current practice for establishing school attendance areas. The committee also struck language that it is recommending be placed in the accompanying administrative regulation, including adding language to promulgate a regulation for this policy. The committee is recommending the Board of Education to approve the first reading of proposed changes to Policy JCA.
Thank you, Mrs. Ram. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I move to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy JCA entitled Establishment of School Attendance Areas.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zeckmeyer. Any questions or any discussion?
I'd just like to say that, as Mrs. Rahm has stated, this is part of an ongoing examination of a lot of policies, many of which have not been updated for years and years and years. There's nothing really controversial or new in some of these. We clean up the language, make it clearer, and so forth. So again, it's a laborious task because it takes time to get it right, and the policy committee has Mrs. Rahm, who makes sure that we toe the line legally.
I just have a quick question. Like Mr. Stauffer said, for the most part, it seems like we're just cleaning up the language. This one does have a couple of additions. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like this is mainly stuff we're already doing. We're just actually adding it to policy.
You're absolutely correct. The large sections you'll see that are struck out is because they're better suited for an administrative regulation as opposed to the policy. And so what we did is this has been our practice, and so we're codifying essentially what we're doing so that general members of the public and families especially understand and are transparent about this is our process.
Thank you.
The other thing that we're doing as we're going through the manual and reviewing policies is to putting policies in the current format that we're using, and so all of that, what you see there in blue with regard to the purpose and statement, yeah. Okay. Question?
So there's no change in the procedure of this?
No.
So, okay.
No, we didn't change anything. We just wanted to be more transparent so people are aware of what we're actually doing.
Does the state provide the wording for this, or do we make that per school system?
In a lot of cases, unless it's one set out by MSDE, we're getting it from statute. And then we work very diligently to take law and turn it into plain English.
Okay, okay.
So, Mr. Stauffer, would you like to speak to that? It's kind of a combination of both, isn't it? It's the law and it's some wordsmithing on the part of committee members, largely. Any other questions? Any further discussion? And we'll move to the vote. The motion is to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy JCA entitled Establishment of School Attendance Areas. All those in favor? All right, we have 6 affirmative and the student member concurs. Motion carries. Thank you. And at this time, we shall move to the superintendent's report. Dr. Savine.
Yes, President Williams, members of the board, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Prue, our Chief Operating Officer. Mr. Prue will present a summary of how the blueprint for Maryland's future will impact local funding and forecast funding under the concentration of poverty program. Mr. Prue.
Thank you, Dr. Savine. I do apologize. Dr. Burhans was intended to be with me this evening, but she had an unexpected emergency this evening. So you got me solo. So we're gonna zip through this. We're gonna see how we turn out here. So as you can remember, we provided an update at the last business meeting on the blueprint funding, taking a look at, as you look at the pyramid on the screen, the foundation rate, other additional aid, targeted educational aids. We did not talk about concentration of poverty during the last presentation, but what we're going to try to do here in the first part of the presentation is take a look at, kind of revisit the 3 areas that we looked at 3 weeks ago, but now from a more of a local lens. What's going to be the impact on the Board of County Commissioners and local government funding? Again, as a matter of reminder, these are the statutory rates that are set for foundation and then the targeted aids. Again, the foundation rates are statutorily set, and then the other rates are set as a percentage of what is the foundation rate for funding. And that sort of drives then with enrollment, that drives where we go with funding. So as we look at FY24, didn't take an opportunity to look at 23. I thought I'd go right into a forecast for 24, kind of walk you through this chart a little bit. As we look at the foundation line, again, based on what we are expecting for enrollment in FY24, which is about 250 more students in FY24 than we currently are intending here. Well, I should say, let me back up. Approximately 250 more students on the student count on September 30th of this coming year, 2022, which is the benchmark for FY24 funding, and then rolled into the 3-year average that we talked about the last time. So, short of revisiting the whole thing, I want to just kind of give that reminder. We should expect, based on that enrollment and the per capita rates, $185 million in total combined state and local aid in the foundation area. And how this breaks out then is actually, Mr. Brandenburg and I had a call with the head of the finance division at MSDE today to understand wealth equalization a little bit better. So on foundation, the wealth equalization really is the local share as it's always been under the Thornton Foundation rules. So the 66% actually is the same breakdown that all LEAs are receiving, and we should get 66% of the funding from state government. That then leaves 33.14% coming from the locals, which equates to $61 million, and that's what you see on that third column on the foundation line. As we look at wealth equalization and all the other grants, it's a function of our percentage of students compared to the total statewide enrollment in that targeted area, and also then related to our county's individual wealth. And that's why the percentages are different for each of the categories. So for instance, I'll drag you to the English learner line. We're 0.62% of the total statewide EL enrollment. Somewhere along the line, then that 0.62 and our wealth equalization, or our county's individual wealth, calculates out that 71% of EL learner funding will come from the state, and the remaining roughly 29% comes from the locals. So as we work down through all of those lines, it totals out that the local blueprint share projected for FY24 is $100 million. The anticipated maintenance of effort number that we talked about 3 weeks ago is approximately $108 million. So maintenance of effort right now is exceeding the local share under the blueprint formulas, and in this case by about by about $8 million. Under the formula, then, we will stay with the maintenance of effort formula because it is greater than the local share, and we will continue to work through maintenance of effort until the point that the local share starts to exceed the local blueprint share starts to exceed maintenance of effort. Go through the same estimations for FY25. You can see foundation rises to $190 million. The wealth equalizations at this point are remaining the same. We have no way at this point to forecast what's going to happen with the equalizations and all the subcategories, and we're going to start monitoring those year in and year out to see what kind of fluctuations there are in enrollment statewide and what that does to the equalization so that we can hopefully fine-tune those numbers a little bit. But you can see that local blueprint share in FY25 looks to be about $103 million. with anticipated maintenance of effort at $109 million, leaving the maintenance of effort exceeds the blueprint by almost $6 million, $5.9 million. Once again, in FY25, we expect to stay with the maintenance of effort formula. Looking ahead to 26, and I hesitate to go to 26 because, again, enrollment projections now are getting much softer, being 3 years out. But the local blueprint share, if the enrollment trends hold true, would be $109 million. Maintenance of effort would be $110 million. And now we're only about $1.25 million apart. So the numbers are getting much closer. And I summarize that for you here in the next slide, where you can really see, and at this point I added FY23 to give you a good look at what happened in 23, what are we expecting in 24, 25, 26, and you can see that gap starting to narrow. If enrollment trends hold true of what we're projecting at this point and what we've approved in our EFMP, this tells me that in FY27 we'll be using local blueprint share as opposed to MOE as the funding source for local government. And I want to pause there because we're going to shift gears in the presentation to concentration of poverty, but I wanted to take a time to see if there were questions on what I presented, if I can clarify any information for board members.
Questions?
Okay. Moving on. So as we talk about concentration of poverty, and you may recall that Mr. Jacoby and Mr. Jackson were here several months ago, I think in March, and presented on concentration of poverty and what we had going on in some of our schools that have already started concentration of poverty. But to begin with, concentration of poverty schools, again, another part of the blueprint, are identified by the poverty rates. At this point, schools that are 70% free and reduced or greater are starting to receive concentration of poverty money, and we'll show you that as we talk about a slide later where we show you kind of the inclusion of programs moving forward. And there are currently 300 or slightly more than 300 COP schools in the state, representing over a dozen school districts in the state of Maryland. These are the types of wraparound services. So concentration of poverty is really it's a lot, honestly, is a lot based on what's been going on in our community with the Bester Community of Hope. And the folks at the Bester Community of Hope, well, I think were impactful to the Kerwin Commission and the legislators as they were talking about concentration of poverty and building the concentration of poverty model. But it's really about wrapping services around students and their families to support the educational process and hopefully to eliminate some of the stressors that happen within the community, within the home, that allow the student's mind to be free to learn. So that's really what we're trying to do with concentration of poverty services, and you see a number of the potential services here on the screen.
So this was a way of helping with the social, emotional health of the students.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the personnel, or the COP grant is carved into two parts. The first, known as either the base grant or the personnel grant, is to provide a school-based concentration of poverty coordinator and a health professional. The health professional identified as at least an RN or greater, and that's what we've been, with our Meritus program, that's what we've been instituting in all of our health rooms in our COP schools, is the professional, or is the RN. The FY23 full value of this grant is $259,000 for the schools that are in concentration of poverty. So we look at the per pupil grant as you move forward, and again, the next couple of slides show you kind of the entrance of our schools. The per pupil grant starts to provide money to the school on a per pupil, per capita basis. The full value of that in FY23 is $3,500, and that climbs with inflation on an annual basis. So that number will continue to climb over the years. It's also a full phase-in value over 7 years. So, and it's not the 7 years of COP, but it's a school's 7 years in COP. So as we look at some forecasting models here in a minute, Bester and Salem are getting ready to enter year 2. So they've moved on to the 32% benchmark already. When our next slate of schools come on board, I believe Eastern, Lutheran, Monroe, they'll come on board at the per capita at the 16%, and they'll keep moving forward. All through that, the full value is moving. So you'll notice as we go through the numbers, a school that's in year 1 this year and a school that's in year 1 next year will not have the same value in their year 1 year because, of course, the full value is changing with inflation over time. In terms of the phase-in, By the time we got to FY21, we were at schools with 75% poverty or greater were receiving the personnel grants. In FY22, we received personnel grants for Eastern and Hickory. In FY23, we received the personnel grant for Jonathan Hager. And what we've done, actually, I think Dr. Michael maybe had previously shared, is we forecasted out the remaining schools, MK Dowd, Russell Hicks, South Hagerstown High School, Western Heights, and we front-loaded the personnel grant with our ESSER funds, anticipating that these schools will come online and wanting to start some of the concentration of poverty services sooner for those students. So uniquely, this phase-in period to the 55% benchmark, and that's where it stops for concentration of poverty, coincides with the elimination of our ESSER funds. So as Russell Hicks, South, and Western Heights come on board in FY25, provided they maintain the free and reduced rate, the ESSER money goes away, the concentration of poverty money kicks in, and we have that continuity of funding for those personnel grants. Looking at the per pupil allocation, in FY22, we picked up the first-year allocation for Bester and Salem. There were no new allocations for us in FY23, so Bester and Salem are moving on to year 2, but no new schools heading into year 1. And in FY24, we expect that we'll see 5 new schools: Eastern, Hickory, Lincolnshire, Pangbourne, and Ruth Ann Monroe. FY25, we expect Jonathan Hager, and then following really we're trailing about a year or 2 behind the personnel grant. In 26, you'll see MK Dowd. 27, we expect to see Russell Hicks, South High, and Western Heights. One of the topics that the community schools coordinator is supposed to undertake within the first year is a needs assessment for their specific community. So that needs assessment is done at least a year in advance of the per pupil allocation coming on board, so that then once the money comes on board, you can create a budgetary plan to allocate the funding in the places of greatest need based on those needs assessments that are done by the Concentration of Poverty Coordinator. Looking at the funding model as we look at FY23, and again, Bester and Salem are in their year 2, 16 or 32% value. So they'll be receiving $1,128 per student. This is again based on the September 30 enrollment figures. So you can see combined between them, they'll have $1.3 million to spend on additional wraparound services. In FY24, again, we expect the 5 additional schools to come on. You can see their value at $572. You can see Bester and Salem's allocation climbs to $1,323 as they hit year 3, which I believe is 37%. And as a county, we'll receive almost $3.1 million for concentration of poverty. And if we look at FY25, again, Bester hitting year 4, which I believe is 50% or 55%. So they'll get upwards of almost $2,000 a student. Eastern, Hickory, Lincolnshire, Pangbourne, Ruth Ann Monroe hitting year 2 at $1,100. And you can see Jonathan Hager coming on board at $580. And just again to flick back, as I mentioned earlier, sorry, clicker wrong way. As I mentioned earlier, because of the inflationary factor, that year 1 number moved. So it was $572 for those 5 schools in FY24. And when Hager comes on, there's a slight increase. It becomes $580. But we anticipate about $5.6 million in FY25. Again, money for wraparound services. And I think as we see, and we're starting to really plan for a hand-in-glove approach to concentration of poverty and Title I, same types of services to our students, and really trying to build those together to make sure we don't have duplication, but we can cover more ground as needed and support our families. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
I have one. And because of my years working in Title I, that is my frame of reference, Mr. Prue. So once the school is identified, all students in that school, much like in Title I, once a school is identified as a Title I school, all students, regardless of whether or not they are free and reduced meal students, receive the services. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I should note, as a comment to you're saying all students. All students will receive the services. Funding is based on the K-5 count in an elementary school, pre-K excluded.
Okay.
So, but pre-K students would still be eligible to receive those services.
So it's the school is identified by the percentage of farm students, but once that identification is made, to determine the allocation, it's the full enrollment K through 5.
Correct.
Of that school, and then all students, regardless of whether they are paying students or not, they receive any available services.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That's correct.
I have a question. So, Mr. For the services that are given to these schools, is each school identified differently for what they need? Are the needs of the school different? Say Salem might have different needs than Bester.
That is likely. I think you could expect that the needs will be very similar. But the weighting of which need is more important might be different in a different school based on the unique needs of that community. I'm trying to think just for example, as the schools come on board, the needs of an elementary school will be different than the needs of a secondary school, as a middle or high school. So as Western Heights, E. Russell Hicks, and South High come online, I would expect the needs in those schools to be different than potentially Best or Salem or Ruth Ann Monroe as a primary school. But the overarching needs are probably very, very similar, and the underlying root of those is probably very similar.
So will this money be allocated through the blueprint office, like our Title I funds are
So-
managed and?
So it is allocated, through the state. We, as a Board of Education, will keep the money in restricted funds. So it won't be you won't see it as part of the general fund operating budget. For us, concentration of poverty is working out of the Office of Student Services.
Okay.
So Billy Jackson, in his role as a coordinator in Student Services, is overseeing, and of course, later this evening on Personnel Actions, you have a recommendation for a community schools coordinator that will work system-wide on top of, and I shouldn't use the word on top of, in addition to and hand in hand with the coordinators at the school level to make sure that we are seeing cohesion in the types of services that we're utilizing and connectivity between our schools on strengths and weaknesses based on services that are available, and to match up schools with community providers that may already be providing that service, that we could maybe purchase that service to be offered in our school to our students and their families, and leverage those community supports.
Thank you.
Because of this money that follows the student under this blueprint, how much more accounting staff are we going to have here at WCPS to keep track of all this? Because obviously, this will be scrutinized by the accountability and implementation boards, right?
Absolutely. Well, my answer are David's. Mr. Brandenburg would ask you for several more accountants and potentially a budget analyst. I mean, that's a need, and the finance team is grateful for the additional accountant that's been hired within the last year, and the FY23 operating budget has been moved from grant funded to general fund operated, so we know it's a solidified, consistent position. That will be of assistance. It remains to be seen the additional work that will be required in a lot of ways to support how this money is being tracked and allocated, accounted for, and what those additional needs will look like. So I don't want to tell you now that I don't need any, but I don't want to tell you I need 5.
If the AIB doesn't like the plans that WCPS comes up with to spend this money in the various schools, are there penalties and so forth?
They can withhold funding until we justify that it's being funded
25%,
appropriately.
right?
Until it's being funded appropriately.
Yeah.
Or allocated appropriately.
So my question is with regard to the administration of the funds, and again, using Title I as my frame of reference, on this last page where I see the total grant allocations for those individual schools and then that number, will each of those schools receive that total grant allocation and the school will determine how to spend that allocation? Or do those individual allocations add up to $5,597,430 that comes to the school system, and then the school system here at the central office will determine how that money is
Yep.
distributed and used based on need?
So using Bester as an example, top line, the $1,093,000 has to be spent at Bester Elementary School. Has to
As
be.
they see fit?
As they see fit, in line with their needs assessment And in consultation with then the system-wide community schools coordinator, and really working in conjunction with the Title I department to see what services they're providing so we don't have duplicating and overlapping services unless they're needed. And in conjunction with Office of Curriculum, executive directors of elementary and secondary providing their input as well. There's going to be input, but ultimately that money gets spent at the school with the needs of the school being handled first.
Thank you.
I have one more question. Have they allocated any funds for us to hire any extra staff or the blueprint coordinator? Or are we paying that out of our budget?
We are allocating a portion of the central office coordinator to each of the grants to coordinate all of the activities, and that's been approved as part of our COP application to the state.
Any other questions? I'm just trying to think about, when you talk about duplication of services, knowing the Title I program as I do, and trying to understand this, Mrs. Walland, who is currently the supervisor of Title I, she will be interfacing with the coordinators?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to running her Title I program
That's correct.
in the 8-9
Correct.
Title I
And may
schools.
spend more time with the coordinator that's here in student services.
student services.
Where I think they'll probably be on speed dial to each other and probably meeting with each other on a regular basis because we don't want to duplicate those services.
Right.
And we want to make sure we can support each other and support each other's program appropriately to make sure the funds are allocated appropriately.
Thank you, Mr. Pearl.
My pleasure.
Any other questions?
President Williams, I just want to, as we transition, want to extend my appreciation to Mr. Prue and other team members for their attention to detail in the blueprint. That is just yet another update on the blueprint. We'll probably have many to come to keep the board informed as well as our greater public. Joining Mr. Prue is, as you can see, Dr. Willow, Associate Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. As we transition to the next presentation, we will focus on providing a summary of the Washington County Public Schools Accelerate Learning 2022-23 reopening plan.
Thank you, Dr. Sovine, President Williams, Vice President Stauffer. Before I get into the presentation, I want to give a little bit of background on the reopening plan for our listening audience and for also our board members and for those that are in attendance tonight. The reopening plan was actually created last summer. It was a requirement of MSDE. There were 13 parts to it. It was approved by MSDE. The reopening plan gets reevaluated or updated every 6 months. We last updated toward the end of January, again approved by MSDE. And tonight, what we are presenting is a draft reopening plan presentation. This plan will be on our website tomorrow afternoon, along with a survey. We welcome students, teachers, community feedback, parent feedback. Last time we did the update in January, we did have over 500 people participate in the survey, and we used that feedback then to finalize the plan. So the community input, our stakeholders, from our students, our teachers, our administrators, that's an important part of this process. So everything we're sharing tonight is draft. Survey will be open for 2 weeks. We will then update the plan, and then we will submit this to MSDE for approval right around the middle of August. So that's our timeline, and that's a little bit of the background on the reopening plan. So as we get into our guiding principles, these haven't changed. The plan is created to protect the health and safety of all stakeholders, provide access to grade level instruction, social emotional wellness for students and staff. We'll talk about that a little bit more. That is mental health, providing mental health services. We continue to do that in this plan. We continue to set aside funding for that. Equity is a word that takes on many different meanings. For us in this plan, ensuring equity is that each student has what they need in order to be successful. And most of the time in this plan, you're going to be hearing us refer to wraparound tutoring or supplemental instruction, but it's really providing access to meet our students' academic needs. And then, of course, the collaboration with our community, family, and community partners, and that we know that this plan is a living document and will continue to need updates. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Prue to talk about some of the updates to our safety protocols.
So thinking about the safety protocols, this is going to take a couple of slides. Very few changes from what we've done over the last year, but I think some of the changes that there are very significant. Starting within the transportation department, from a safety perspective, we're still handling enhanced safety protocols and enhanced cleaning protocols. We're still continuing with driver training, both on those enhanced protocols and their regular existing training. And throughout the pandemic, we've maintained our DOT bus inspections as is required by law without flaw. And that has continued, and it's a real credit to our fleet team that really takes that very seriously and makes things happen. I think for our viewing audience, from a seating perspective on the bus, as we know, early in the pandemic, we talked about limited seating. What would that look like? Sometimes as few as 12 and 15 and 18 students on a bus. We are at a point, and we're at a point last year, that our community should expect full capacity on the bus. That is the expectation. Our buses are full, really, as they were pre-pandemic, and that should not be a surprise to anybody really moving forward. As we think about maintaining the healthy environment in schools, we are still providing hand sanitizer. We're maintaining the air purifiers that the board purchased about 18 months ago. Those are still being maintained, filters changed, light bulbs changed as needed. We still have a few spares that if something were to break, they can be replaced and maintained. We're disinfecting regularly, and again, continuing to encourage hand washing of students and staff in the school on a regular basis. This is the place where we would probably see the biggest change, is really in terms of where we are with testing and with contact tracing. We are maintaining on-site rapid testing in health rooms for individuals that are symptomatic or just don't feel right. That's I think the term I hear a lot from people lately is I just don't feel right. So we're maintaining that. We also those test kits come to us free of charge from the Department of Health. We request shipments periodically and receive those. We've already received the shipment for the coming year. We've also received a shipment for the coming year of over-the-counter take-home tests, which will be they're in 2-pack cartons. Those have already been received, shipped out to schools to be made available during back-to-school nights and throughout summer school for families that would want them to have at home to be able to test at home should they feel the desire to do that. On the contact tracing front, we are preparing by the end of this month to close the COVID-19 response center at Washington County Public Schools. We've had that discussion with the county health department that all contact tracing would revert to the health department, that's not really a business we're in. We would continue to support them if they had to do some outbreak investigations and they needed additional information. We would support them as best we could. Barring any amazing rises in case counts and things that might require a change, that's really where we are. From a communication perspective, through all the avenues that our families have reached out to us, we'll be making updates to the COVID-19 website to reflect that the response center is officially closing at the end of the month, with information on, somewhat with the CDC rules, but to contact your health department, contact your medical provider, where to submit. There is an MDH link for families that they want to submit their COVID-19 positive test results, where they can do that online. To have that communication with the health department, we will provide those links and make those things accessible to our families. We have a COVID-19 response phone number. We'll put an out-of-office voicemail on that line and close the mailbox to not receive messages so that parents can't say, I left a message and nobody got back to me. The message will be clear that the number is no longer being maintained. They should follow the advice of their health professionals and notify the school of their absences. And lastly, the COVID response email will also be similar. where there'll be an out-of-office message there, letting individuals know that that mailbox is no longer being monitored, and the same rules that we're posting on the website and having in the voicemail, that you should contact your health professional, where to send your test results, all of that will be there. That's probably the largest change, I think, as we're moving forward. I think we're getting to that point where, even as we ran through the spring, we did very little contact tracing, and so it's time to make that move.
And I might add to Mr. Prue's comments that we still have PPE available for those that request a mask or for those that want additional supplies. We still have a healthy stock of all of that available for any parent, student that would make that request, staff member. So let's talk a little bit about curriculum and instruction. Not many updates here in terms of the reopening plan. When we came out of COVID, probably the big buzzword being used was the idea of acceleration. We need to accelerate learning for all students. But what does that really mean? And our message has been consistent for us. There are 4 areas that truly equate to acceleration. That begins with student-staff relationships, teacher clarity with a focus on grade level instruction, feedback, and then for the students that have unfinished learning, we talk about scaffolding. We do not teach to a lower grade level. We teach to grade level, but we add support so that all students can access grade level instruction. That is essential to closing academic gaps. We had some successes. We do not have state testing data back to be able to compare where we are at in comparison to the state. We did get some initial MESA science assessment results back. Those are embargoed, but I will say the data does look promising, especially in comparison to where WCPS was at pre-pandemic to where we're at now, after coming back and reopening and being back in full session, our state ranking has climbed. So that is encouraging data. When we look at some of our local data assessment, we have seen increases in our primary grade levels in literacy. That is key. That is foundational to all other learning, the importance of reading at our primary grade levels. And if you remember, Ms. Seiler was here previously when we talked about the updates to the new resource and shared those math gains with you, so that is not new information. We will continue to identify students who have unfinished learning. We will continue to provide tutoring opportunities and supplemental instruction. Those opportunities will occur during the day, before the school day, and after the school day as needed. I think Dr. Sovine is going to share some, wonderful updates in his report for summer school, but we will continue twilight at our high schools and evening high school services like we've done in the past. I would add for our health and wellness of students and staff, one of the things that we have heard consistently is the access to mental health services. You all as a board have addressed some of that through adding additional counselors and social workers in this last budget. But I would add that we will continue to use title funding and grant funding to provide mental health services during the school day. That is a continuation of what we started previously, even pre-pandemic, and those services will continue, and we will continue to write those into our grant applications. And then I would simply add that we continue to do staff professional development, professional learning around the concept of acceleration, but also providing supports to our students. I have to bring up extracurricular activities. We are back. The season is in, getting ready for the August session for fall sports. But for us, really, the extracurricular activities, we will have PPE, personal protective equipment, available for those, again, that want that. And we have plenty of those supplies, just like for in the classroom, but also out on the athletic field. Continue to provide hand sanitizing stations. And one of the things that we'll continue to encourage is not sharing of items, but that is, I think, something that just naturally tends to happen with athletes, but we will encourage or continue to discourage that use with our coaches and our players. And then finally, as part of this reopening plan, we are participating in all of the MPSSAA athletic events, and so those are our seasons. We start fall sports August 10th, and then the first play date is Friday, September 2nd, which will open up with some football games that night.
Mark your calendars.
And I think we're available if there are any questions.
Mr. Stafford?
In curriculum instruction, you gave us, I always forget how to pronounce these names, Hattie?
John Hattie.
Hattie?
Yes.
Okay. How did they, so the public knows, how do they determine the effect size? Is it through study groups that they did, pilot groups?
He's one of the leading researchers out.
Say again?
He's one of the leading researchers out
Right.
there. The book that, there's a lot of different publications, but if someone in the community wanted to further see the research, it's Visible Learning. And he actually has over 250 items that he identifies through research that increase student achievement, but there are also items that detract from student achievement, other practices. And so studies conducted around the world, but also within the United States.
And one other question, are we using any, in light of COVID and so forth, are we using any special things for extracurricular, for example, wrestling mats? Years ago, MRSA was the big thing, and we had some MRSA outbreaks when I was the AD at Williamsport, and we had to deal with that. Are we using
Yes.
any extra precautions other than the things that are ordinarily used to clean those mats? And-
So during COVID, I'll give you an example for wrestling since you brought that up. We bought the UV light machines. You'll see them if you go to our wrestling matches. In between events, you will actually see either our coach, custodian, whoever's there on duty, will walk across the mats with the UV lights. They're on wheels, and they are meant to disinfect. I think it's something like 99.9% of the surface. But that is something we used COVID funding for, I think, early last year to have for the wrestling season.
And one last thing, how about football equipment? I mean, the shoulder pads and stuff are put into the drying room and they dry off, but do we use something to clean those with? I mean, I don't think we did when I was the AD. They just dried off and that was it.
I know. Go ahead.
I think I'd have to defer to Eric Michael and to see, you know, or to look at really the practices he's put in his particular section of the reopening plan to give you a firm answer, but we could get back to you on
Bring
that.
it back to me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have one question. It's not technically about the school reopening plan. I do think it's important for the curriculum instruction part. I know we've, a couple months ago, spoke about the American Sign Language and potentially adding that to the curriculum. I think we've talked about, maybe there was some discussion about adding it. Is there any update on that?
So I can share with you that I think we have some potential good news to add to our fall program of studies, which I'll be back here in the fall to ask for your approval. We've had some preliminary conversations with Hagerstown Community College that offers that program, and we would be able to use that and offer it in all of our high schools, and not only be able to count it for the University of Maryland graduation requirement, but we're also looking at making it worth college credits, dual credit, and under Blueprint that would be free for all students to take and earn those credits. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity and some other opportunities that we'll bring to you in the fall. Unfortunately, we are a year away. That's just the way the program of studies works. When we look at course requests, we have to remember our students begin scheduling December, January for that upcoming year. So this was something, but we wanted to make sure it was tied to our Blueprint pathways that allow for CCR requirements, going out and doing the CTE, but also count those opportunities for dual credit.
Yeah, I know my really, I guess, biggest concern is that we're struggling to hire teachers to begin with, and I can't imagine that there's many ASL certified teachers out there, so.
Under the current plan or model, which can obviously change between the fall, HCC would be providing us an instructor, and we would use their instructor. We would piggyback off of their curriculum, And again, the important part for us when we talk about equity is making sure that all of our students, regardless of what high school they attend, would have access to those courses.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just on your spring dates, you might want to change that. On your competition seasons, your spring date. You have 20.
Thank you.
22.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Just want to extend my appreciation once again to Dr. Willow, Mr. Prue, and I also just want to take this opportunity to reemphasize that the reopening plan presentation is in draft format. As Dr. Willow mentioned, we welcome parent and community feedback.
Would you like to move right into your update?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, President Williams, and members of the board. I'm pleased to share my transition to Washington County is off to a great start. I'm thankful for all the people that have welcomed me to Washington County. I've had the opportunity to visit 8 schools so far, and I plan to visit all schools and facilities over the next few months. I've enjoyed meeting staff and touring our schools. In addition to receiving a warm welcome from our school staff, I've been impressed with the school's cleanliness and how our teams have maintained these buildings. I know we have a number of projects happening right now, and I want to thank all of our team members for their hard work out in our schools. Later this week and into next week, I will have the opportunity to meet with all of our school principals. I'm excited about the opportunity to meet our principals and learn more about our many successes and opportunities that exist in their schools. On Thursday of July the 14th last week, I had the opportunity to attend the Greater Hagerstown Committee's Education Forum. I thoroughly enjoyed meeting several of our business leaders. We discussed the possibility of working with the Greater Hagerstown Committee to expand career and technology education and apprenticeship opportunities. Last but not least, but most importantly, I'm excited to share that our summer school is off to a great start. Our elementary school staff has created 296 camps. As of July 14th, Washington County Public Schools has had 2,445 students attend an elementary camp. Our middle school staff has created approximately 110 camps. As of July 14th, Washington County Public Schools has had 712 students attend a middle school camp. It's important to note that all our camps include literacy skills. Some camps include music, Minecraft, animals, nature, cooking, financial literacy, sports, art, public speaking, robotics, and health, just to name a few of the exciting, rich learning experiences provided to our students. I'm so grateful to our teachers, our administrators, and our educational support staff for all that they have done and will continue to do to support rich, authentic learning experiences for our students. President Wade, that concludes my report for this evening's meeting. Remain available for questions or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Soline. Any questions, comments? All right, we'll move then to personnel action. We have our Chief Legal Counsel this evening with that.
Good evening. As discussed earlier in closed session, there are a number of staff changes for your consideration. At this time, I ask for approval of staff changes.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
President Williams, I move to approve the personnel actions dated Tuesday, July 19th, 2022, as presented in the closed session.
Thank you, Mrs. Murray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any questions before we move to the vote? Voting to approve personnel actions as discussed earlier in our closed session. Are those in favor? All right, we have 6 affirmative votes. Motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to reports to the board, and we'll begin with board member committee reports. Ms. Cruz, would you have anything for us from student government, or nothing so far?
Nope, not right now. It's the summer.
All right, we'll look forward to hearing as the school year approaches, the start of the school year approaches. Mrs. Murray, would you like to comment with regard to your committee?
Yes, Human Resources will meet next Tuesday, July 26th at 10 a.m. here at the CES.
Yeah, our last meeting was held on June 28th over at the Boyd J. Michael Technical High School. I had to think about that. It's a mouthful, but well worth it. We did a tour of the new construction that is happening over there. And that is going to be, and I encourage my other fellow board members, if they get a chance to do a tour, please do that, because it's really exciting to see. And I know a while back, Linda, we went over there and we toured some classrooms. They're not there anymore.
Oh my gosh.
They're all gone. Paint shops all been changed around. It's just fantastic, all the stuff that they're doing. And little areas have now become large areas. It's just amazing what we're going to be able to do with our technical high school. It's going to be state of the art. I can't imagine it not being, a crown jewel of, one of the crown jewels of Washington County that we have in our school system. So I encourage our board members to take the opportunity, if you get a chance in the summer, to go over there and get a quick tour, because it's very nice, and it's developing. You can see we were really excited because the walls were torn down that day, so we could see where the walls were and how it opened up big rooms now. And so I hope to go back closer to when school goes back into session to see, because they're ready. They were going at it, so I can't imagine how much improved just in a couple of weeks. There's a lot of people over there working, so it's exciting. So, and I know those teachers over there got to be excited to see the process, because they were working through the tearing down at the end of their school year, because they were having to move people around a little bit. Now they're going to come back and it's going to be fabulous. So I'm happy for them, happy for us. We did review some of the summer projects. Rob Rollins went over the projects that we had on the agenda for the summer. I know there's a lot on that's happening across Washington County in all of our schools. So look for some major happenings at the schools. We talked about some of the developments that are coming in. Two of the new developments. One is at Paradise Heights. Chad Criswell gave a report on that and how it's going to be affecting some of our schools. That is a feeder. That project is out in the north end. That is going to be affecting our Morgansville Northern and North High schools. There'll be feeders to that, and we're looking at about 120 units that are going to be added out there, and we're looking at about 20 students kind of divided up in all three of those schools. So a large project, not a lot of students coming in compared to the next development that we talked about, which is Virginia Commons off of Virginia Avenue. If you're going in towards Hagerstown, kind of like it's already the state line or the county line, the city line. It's that big farm that's kind of off to the right. You can't really see it, but there's a large section and it backs up to the railroad tracks. That is off of Oak Hill Avenue, Oak Hill Drive, Oak Ridge Drive. Oak Ridge Drive. And so that farm has been empty ever since I've been a kid, and now they're just starting to develop it. So We're looking at probably about, right now, the first phase, about 36 units. We're thinking about 32 students will be affected into our school system for that. They are single-family homes, so typically you're looking at more students coming in from that. So those are two projects that we reviewed, Chad brought to us. So other than that, that's facilities, and our next meeting won't be until the end of August.
So is that also the land in behind Greenberg Farm there?
I'm not sure what the name of that farm is. I mean, it's
No, but I mean Greenberg Farm, the flower
Greenberg-
place, the nursery and stuff. There
Oh,
on
Greenberg, yes, I'm sorry, yeah, that farm.
Land back in there.
Yeah, it's actually down, it's more towards, the first phase is down towards the city of Hagerstown.
Okay.
So it's that, kind of where Greenberg Farm is in the county, and then go in towards town, the first phase is in the city.
The city line's about Armstrong Avenue.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So it's going to be down that way, and it's going to be, multiple phases, so that's going to be a lot of, that's a lot of land back
Yeah,
there.
it is.
I was a kid, and we lived there on Oak Ridge Drive, and that's been empty and farmed ever since, so that's
Long time.
50, I was in kindergarten when I lived there, so that's 50-some years. That's going to be developed, and so that's going to affect a lot of our, attendance zones in the future, not right away, but in the future. So we're going to be, we got that on the radar. So,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Mr. Evans, Finance?
Yeah, our last meeting was actually postponed until Tuesday, August 23rd at 9 a.m.
Thank you. Dr. Zentmeyer, Curriculum and Instruction?
Dr. Will has already given us great updates on curriculum and instruction in our next CNI meetings here at 10:30 on August 23rd.
Thank you. Mr. Felber, did you want to say anything? Mr. Bickford isn't here to report on policy review and development. Was there anything you wanted to share?
I would just say that the personal electronic devices, I think pretty much was aimed at cell phone use, although there are other personal devices, communication devices. And I would just say that there are people in the community who would say, why doesn't the school system ban cell phones by student use? But I think we realize that's pretty difficult to do and to bring about. But this new policy will work if parents will impress upon their children the fact that to use them responsibly and properly in schools. That's all I'll say.
We'll move to miscellaneous business. We have one item that's always under there, and that is our list of future agenda items. It's a rather short list as compared to some we've had in the past. We have coming up in August the Advanced Placement in International Baccalaureate Data Report, and then in September we have some other reports. October we'll be looking at the Comprehensive Maintenance Plan, and we'll be having a report on the very successful, I'm sure, 2022 summer learning programs. So we have those upcoming. If you have any items that you would like to see on a future agenda, please let a member of the Agenda Planning Committee know so we can take care of getting those things of interest to you on an agenda. So now we'll move to board member comments. Dr. Zentmeyer, would you like to begin down there?
Students from our county competed at the Future Health Professionals International Leadership Conference in June. And 5 students from the Boyd J. Michael III Technical High School, it was so much easier when it was just Tech High, were in the top 10 in the anatomy tournament and the microbiology knowledge test from among 10,000 kids. 10,000 kids from all 50 states, Puerto Rico, China, Korea, and Canada competed. And our students placed. It was amazing. Leah Bosnick, Alexa Kretzer, Isaiah Underwood, and Captain Corey Trumpauer earned gold medals in Maryland at the anatomy tournament before they competed with 174 teams when they went to Nashville, and they placed 9th. It was a challenging competition. After earning state gold medals in forensic science, Jenna Rockwell and was a top 10 in the microbiology knowledge exam. As a former nurse, this is really exciting to me because this is really complicated stuff. Kylie Sparks and Corey Trumpauer also earned proficiency certifications in forensic medicine and biotech, respectively. They networked with kids from all over the world. To me, that's kids doing great things is a great thing. It's interesting that their teacher, Elizabeth McDonald, is also our Teacher of the Year, said, "I'm proud of our students, not just for their accomplishments, but for their willingness to learn from others, explore new things, and represent Washington County with such grace and enthusiasm." These students truly met their goal to learn, lead, serve, and innovate. And so does Beth. She leads with grace and enthusiasm. So congrats to those students and thank you. And finally, if you'd like one of these really needy "I voted" stickers, you still have 25 minutes. It's not only your right, it's your responsibility. Go vote.
Thank you, Dr. Sutton.
24
Mr. Evans.
minutes to be exact, but all I will say is welcome Dr. Savine and welcome Ms. Cruz. Hopefully you guys are happy to be with us, and we certainly look forward to working with y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Gessler.
I would also like to congratulate all the candidates that are out tonight in primaries. They've done very well. I hope they have success. And the ones who haven't had success, I hope that they'll continue to be engaged in our community because that's how we grow. So thank all those who have put themselves out on the line to be candidates, no matter if they win or lose. And I would also like to take the time to thank our staff that are working during the summer, if it's summer school, if it's maintenance that are out mowing in the heat, or just doing work inside the building, trying to get it ready for the next school year. I'd like to take this time to thank them because sometimes they don't get the time off as some of our regular teachers get off. They have to work constantly to get our schools ready. And come the first day of school, our schools will shine again. And I know you had said you were impressed how we maintain our schools. We've had some, I think it was called the Golden Shovel Award or something like that. We've had some great awards because our teams have really maintained our buildings very well, and it's because they work constantly to do that and maintain our schools. So congratulations to them. Thank you for your hard work and being a part of the community of Washington County Public Schools.
Thank you, Mr. Gessler. Mr. Stauffer?
Let's just celebrate all the good things that occur in WCPS and not focus so much on all the minuses that do occur everywhere. The board president and I had the opportunity, I guess it was July, no, June 29th. Yeah, we participated in, and there were several of these, but we participated in a conversation with the state board president, vice president, and were the other board members there? Or was it just Crawford?
I think Vice President DeShiel was present.
Right, and the president,
And there
Mr.
were,
Crawford.
I think on various days, there were other board
Yeah.
members. Mhm.
And there were people, board presidents, board officers from around the state, and all the school districts are facing problems, big time, that need to be solved. So it's going to have to take patience, and it's going to have to take a lot of effort, and a lot of things to do. And welcome to our new student member. Hope you enjoy your year here. And again, to Dr. Sovine, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer. Mrs. Murray?
Yes, well, I would also like to welcome Dr. Savine and our new student member of the board, and also thank everyone who took the time to vote today. That is very important. It is your right to vote, and it is the way that you have a voice in what goes on. So thank you to everyone that voted today. I voted the other day in early voting, but I always vote. It's very important. And that's it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, Ms. Cruz.
I just want to say thank you for the warm welcome, and I'm so excited for this year. I've heard so many good things from Tanish and Kevin, and even a little from Chris Mackley. So, yeah, I'm very excited for this year.
Well, May, welcome, and we are excited about your enthusiasm, and we are really looking forward to having you with us this year. And we hope that you make the very most of this opportunity, as I'm sure you will. As Vice President Stauffer said, we did have the opportunity to represent this board at a roundtable that was sponsored by the Maryland State Board of Education and the State Department of Education. State Superintendent Chaudhry was present, along with State Board President Clarence Crawford and Vice President Charles DeShiel. The discussion focused on 3 questions. How is the State Board doing? And that was to invoke a candid discussion about the positives and areas for improvement. Another question was, how can the State Board help you be more successful in better educating your children? And the third question was, while respecting our board's roles and responsibilities, how can we improve communications and collaboration on major initiatives, such as the creation and implementation of the state's multi-year strategic plan that will execute the blueprint for Maryland's future to transform the educational experiences of generations of Maryland's children. So it was It was a very candid discussion. Lots of good suggestions made by those in attendance. And if you're so inclined, you can Google it. You can find it on YouTube. Do a little YouTube search. There were a total of 4 roundtables held. There was no rhyme or reason. It was just local presidents and vice presidents, or chairs and vice chairs, were asked to select a convenient date. So there was no assignment. It was an interesting mix. So I will have to share with you that when President Crawford mentioned that the State Board would like to go out to a county and do a remote board meeting, not be in Baltimore from the State Department, I jumped at the chance to extend an invitation. And then I came back and sprung that information on Dr. Savine. So I'm hopeful that at some point in the future, we will have the State Board here at CES doing one of their state meetings. I think that would be an awesome thing for us to experience locally. So if there's nothing else, Dr. Savine, do you have anything that you would like to share as a parting word, or?
I'll just add that I'm just so excited to be here. I just want to reemphasize how much I appreciate the warm welcome, and looking forward to serving this great community.
Thank you so much. We're happy to have you. Happy to have you. Okay, colleagues, if there's nothing further, we will adjourn. Thank you.